As we can see here, further evidence that Kermit Roosevelt was Hitler and Walt Disney, along with Father Coughlin. We can see the glabella, the part between the eyebrows, is consistent. Of course, we have the eyebrows, they are consistent as well. We can see the shape of the ear is consistent. This one's being pushed out by the glasses, but we can still see it's very consistent. The philtrum underneath the nose, the evidence is quite clear. Now, I'm not going to get into too much detail when it comes to the Roosevelts, although I will address a few key issues with that family and the individuals that pulled the same stunt as Kermit. I'll save the details for another video and also for download from Wellaware 1. But Kermit was the son of Theodore Roosevelt. Now, if you're wondering where possibly Kermit got the idea to pull off the stunt that he did, well, I would believe he got it from his father. See, his father had a brother that committed suicide named Elliot. Now, Elliot looks an awful lot like Teddy's Vice President Taft, who then Teddy handpicked and put into the position of president when he left office. Taft also looks like an individual that is a key player at that time, and that is J.P. Morgan. By using, of course, theatrical makeup, the nose putty that was common for stage performers, we can definitely see the transformation is possible. Now, J.P. Morgan also had a rule that he did not want to be photographed because he said he had a problem with his nose. Well, that's the problem. So, the trust-busting credit that Teddy got is bunk. Those of you that don't know what the trust-busting legislation was, it was a cap that was put on corporations at that time, and as you now know that J.P. Morgan, being his brother, or acting as the role of J.P. Morgan, you can understand that that cap would really just affect their competition. So we see how underhanded Teddy Roosevelt really was. Now we can also see where his children got the ideas for what they did, as Kermit's not the only one that played this little game. So Quentin, the youngest of the Roosevelt brothers, he was shot down during World War I at the age of 20. The circumstances surrounding that airplane crash are suspicious, as the photograph clearly shows. So what happened to Quentin? Well, I believe Quentin changed his identity then to Joseph Kennedy. As you can clearly see with these photographs, the ears match and that chin is unmistakable. So I know some of you out there are probably wondering, why would they do this? Well, if we look at what they did after he became Joseph Kennedy, we see that James Roosevelt, the son of FDR, so that would be his cousin, and he went into business together during the Prohibition times and were the exclusive distributors of Gordon's Dry Gin and Dewar's Scotch. So he also invested heavily in Franklin D. Roosevelt's bid for presidency, which he was then rewarded and given the chairman of the SEC position. So you can see how that was definitely beneficial to the whole family. So you can see the importance of them to keep this a secret, because that of course would not be accepted by the general public if they found out that he was a relative and was giving him the seat of the SEC. But of course for the family that works out great, because there is no chance of them being charged with insider trading. He also invested heavily in the Hollywood studios at the same time his brothers were starting the Disney studios. So we can see that there's a definite tie-in to the studios in Hollywood and that we see today. But here's another little interesting fact that I want you to take into consideration. Joseph Kennedy had a daughter named Rosemary. The story is that he allowed her to have a lobotomy that left her the capacity of a moron. Well, this isn't true because we can see the photograph here was taken at Buckingham Palace where she was presented. Now, the comments that were made during her presentation were to the extent of she's not mentally disabled at all. And we know this because we can see that face, and that face is one of Margaret Thatcher. Pay attention to her hairline and you'll see that it's very unique and it matches perfectly. Now there's another reason why they pulled this scam off, because it allowed them to get around the laws that his father put in place that had to do with the capping of the corporations, because we see that Joseph Kennedy invested heavily with Carnegie in the steel mills. So now you can see where there's a problem here due to the fact that one of the brothers being Hitler and another brother being a brigadier general, along with a cousin being a brigadier general, and the other cousin being the president at the time, they were able to successfully extend the war as long as they did. And during those years of being at war, wars need steel to make the equipment. So they successfully manipulated us into a sustained war so they could bank and make billions. So now in this photograph we see Edith, that would be the second daughter of Teddy Roosevelt, that we see peeking over Kermit's shoulder right here, that played a role in this as well. She played Eva Braun. Now we see Ava here with her family, so we're told, but actually in this photograph we see Edith Roosevelt's real mother, herself, and her other sister. But wait, it gets even better, because as we see Ava Braun here, we see a good close-up of her face. That face is Lillian Carter. So now you can understand how the Carter JFK scenario comes into play, as we see with the evidence here.
Talks about who might be the real Rosalind Carter. They talk about the steel magnolia. And I've got to ask you this question. Where's the magnolia?
Where's the steel? I think that started in the campaign, and once somebody writes that, it just keeps being picked up.
Is it more steel than magnolia, or the other way around?
I don't know. I never have felt that I was steely.
So, what do you think the public
Queridos amigos, les habla la esposa del senador John F. Kennedy, candidato a la presidencia de los Estados Unidos.
What about other members in the Kennedy clan? Take note of the ears. Now there's enough material from this one family to go on for days, but now hopefully you have a understanding of who they are, and when you read their stories about the past you'll understand the real relationships behind the scenes. So my objective with this video was to show corruption in the United States and to see if that corruption extended into other countries. So let's look at Australia. This is Jodie Foster. You remember her from Taxi Driver, Robert De Niro movie. This is the Prime Minister of Australia, Julia Gillard. Now, people have rumored that they're the same person. Well, I decided to get some proof. So when we look at Jodie, first thing we can tell is, of course, they do look similar. If we look at the nose, we can tell there's been rhinoplasty done. Same here. When we look at the ears, we can see that these lobes are much longer than this, but we can see that the same structure is underneath here. But when we look at the lobes, we can tell there's a discoloration right here, meaning that these are extensions added to the end of her ear. It's typical, they use these in movies and they They can change the outside of the ear, but it's very difficult for them to change the inside of the ear without making it look very distorted. We can see there's some Photoshop work being done here inside the ear, but nothing that would take it away from matching the inside of this ear. As we can see right there, it's the same lumps, but the discoloration is what we can definitely tell that this has been altered. Now, we look at her skin. Skin definitely is a pretty unique feature that does match. Now, here's where you definitely make the match. The teeth. You'll notice this level, and then up, and then down. This level, and up, and then down. We have the same teeth, exactly the same. Tip, tip. Let's look at the bottom. Sticking up right there. There it is. Overlapping the front. Overlapping the front. We can tell the bites line up. Right in the center of the top tooth. The center of the top tooth. You can see that this one is turned slightly. And there it is. So that, within itself, is a positive 100%, without a doubt, match that the Prime Minister of Australia is in fact Jodie Foster. But wait a second, we're not done. There's some more. John McCain hired Tom Loeffler, a former San Antonio congressman who built a multi-million-dollar lobbying operation to replace the well-oiled fundraising machine built by President Bush for the 2000 contest that left McCain a runner-up. So what about the UK? Do we see anybody that's playing a role in the media that's fake?
Action should be taken instead. RT's Daniel Bushell joins us now live for this in Brussels. Daniel, so the Russian Prime Minister has effectively lashed out on the operation there in Libya.
Yes, he's made the speech in Denmark and he was very angry. He says that Gaddafi is not the best person in the world. Sure, he's made many mistakes, done many bad things, but that does not give the coalition.
I've been planning it for a while, but as every guy out there will know, it takes a certain amount of motivation to get yourself going. So
he says that Gaddafi is not the best person in the world. Sure, he's made many.
Bez ohledu na to, jestli polským prezidentem je Kaczynski nebo někdo jiný, je to tragédie, která nemá obdoby.
All right, well, you know, obviously in law enforcement, fire, any public safety, we look at emergency preparedness very, very seriously. And everyone, you know, when you look at here in Park Motors Mall, everyone... Spadlo
letadlo a dodnes jsou kolem toho různé dohady a ovlivnilo to velmi významně celé dějiny Polska.
His clothing is being taken away from him, and he's being humiliated by having to stand at attention in front of people, male or female, as far as I know, that are fully clothed.